My name is Harper Jameson. I'm 32 years old, and in less than an hour, CNBC is going to tell the world that I sold my company Lumina AI for $2.4 billion. But right now, I'm standing in my parents' driveway in Charleston, South Carolina, staring at my 2011 Subaru Outback wedged between my brother Blake's Tesla and my sister Savannah's white Mercedes G-Wagon. It's Sunday dinner, again. I adjusted my hand-tailored blazer, disguised to look off the rack, and stared at the big, white-columned house I grew up in. The smell of fresh-cut hydrangeas, already drifting through the cracked front door. They always go overboard. This is the performance. The curated floral arrangements, Eleanor's pearls, Dad's third scotch before 6 p.m., all in service of the Jameson brand. This was my last time playing the role of Harper the Disappointment. Finally decided to join us, Savannah called out as she opened the door, her gold heels clicking on the slate stone. Her tone was light practiced, designed to sound like a joke, but it wasn't. It never is. Didn't want to miss roast chicken and judgment. I smiled, stepping past her into the foyer, lined with oil paintings of ancestors who owned land, not companies. "Oh, honey," she drawled, her eyes sweeping over my outfit. "Still shopping outlet clearance." I didn't reply. If only she knew this clearance blazer cost more than her monthly rent. But that wasn't part of the persona. Not yet. Inside, everything was as familiar as it was suffocating. Dad held court in his favorite leather armchair, flipping between stock tickers and college football. Mom flitted between the dining room and the kitchen, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting. Blake stood at the bar swirling whiskey and showing off a new Omega watch to his wife Lauren, who giggled on cue. Harper Mom air-kissed my cheek, then led me into the dining room, where my usual seat waited. Same wobbly leg. Still unfixed after all these years. We were just discussing Blake's new promotion, Senior VP at Sloan & Carson. And Savannah's interior design firm just landed a new client in Palm Beach, she beamed. "That's great," I said, easing into the chair that always leaned just slightly left. "Congrats, Blake." He smirked. "Well, some of us know how to climb a corporate ladder." That one stung, not because it was true, but because I let them believe it was. "Still doing that freelance coding thing?" Blake asked, the way someone might say, "Still dating losers off Craigslist?" I sipped water instead of responding. In 47 minutes, the press embargo lifts. In 47 minutes, they'll know everything. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I love knowing where everyone's listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The thing is, this house always smelled like wealth, but felt like judgment. Dad's art collection, Mom's obsession with silverware polish, the portraits, the wine, the rules. We were raised to perform. We smiled in public, sent thank you cards, never aired dirty laundry. Blake was the golden boy, Savannah the social princess, and I was tolerated. My little tech dreams were always treated like a phase, a sad little side project to keep me busy until I got serious. But I got serious a long time ago. I just stopped showing it. Tonight, I wasn't here for their approval. Tonight, I was here for the moment that would change everything. I could feel it coming before it even started, the usual performance, rehearsed so well, it almost seemed spontaneous. Blake raised his glass and launched into a story about one of his high-net-worth clients, while Lauren nodded along like a backup dancer. Savannah scrolled through Instagram, making sure we all knew her firm's latest beach house redesign had made it onto some influencer's story. Dad, of course, kept flipping between CNBC and ESPN, muttering about inflation and tech bubbles. "So Harper," he said finally, not even looking up from the screen, "Peterson's law firm is hiring IT support staff. Not glamorous, but solid benefits. Could be a good step up for you." I forced a polite smile. "I'm doing all right, Dad." "All right," Blake scoffed. "You're still driving that Subaru? Come on, at your age?" "It runs," I said simply. Lauren leaned in with faux sweetness. "Don't worry, honey. Not everyone needs to be a CEO." I almost laughed. "Is it still?" "Apps?" Savannah asked, spearing a roasted carrot with her gold fork. "Like that one you tried to kickstart a few years ago." "That one had, what, $200 in pledges," Blake added. 50, I corrected. "But who's counting?" They all laughed. I didn't. I just kept watching the clock on my phone. 39 minutes. The countdown hummed in the back of my mind like a soft drum beat. That's the thing about hiding your success. People get real comfortable showing you who they are. It's not shameful to ask for help, Mom added, passing the potatoes. We've always said we'd support you if things got difficult. Like I was some kind of lost cause they were too polite to say out loud. Your father and I still can't believe you used your trust fund on that startup nonsense, she said gently. I invested it, I replied, not wasted it. Yeah, Savannah asked, cocking her head. And what's it worth now? $1,000 and a dream. I didn't answer. 28 minutes. Blake poured more wine, clearly enjoying the show. Let me guess, you've got a big investor meeting coming up. Some coffee shop pitch. Actually, I said I have a call later tonight. Investors. West Coast. Dad looked up this time. Real ones. I nodded. He chuckled, shaking his head. In what exactly, that little app thing? Something like that. Jesus, Harper, Blake said. You're 32. Isn't it time to face reality? I turned my water glass slowly, watching the condensation trail down the side. Savannah giggled at something on her phone. Lauren reached across the table to admire Savannah's ring. Mom returned from the kitchen with the roast. Everything continued like normal, like I hadn't said a word. What they didn't know was that I'd spent the last 6 years becoming someone they'd never expect. Building in silence. Failing learning building again. While they bragged about bonuses and beachfront listings, I was flying under the radar. Every side comment, every pitying glance, it had all been stored away like kindling. And tonight I was holding the match. 22 minutes now. I'm proud of what I've built, I said, breaking the rhythm. Even if you don't understand it. You'll understand when your credit runs dry, Dad muttered. Maybe. Or maybe they were about to understand something else entirely. By the time the dinner rolls made their second round, and the wine bottles had started to empty, I could feel the sweat forming beneath my blazer, not from heat, but from the pressure, the anticipation, the surge I was holding back, like a tidal wave waiting behind a dam. 17 minutes. Savannah's thinking of expanding to Charlotte, Mom said proudly. More clients with taste, less humidity. Savannah gave a humble brag shrug. Well, when you've got a waitlist like mine, I had seen her financials. That waitlist, mostly unpaid invoices and canceled checks. But I said nothing. Lauren leaned toward me, a whisper disguised as concern. Have you thought about just getting something stable, teaching coding maybe? I tilted my head. You think I'd be good at teaching? She paused, sensing something shift. Sure, she said finally, for someone like you. 12 minutes. The clock in my brain had taken over completely now. Every second snapped into place like a gear in a machine. I just don't understand why you insist on this. Starving artist thing, Dad said, gesturing to my blazer. It's not noble to struggle. It's not struggling if it's intentional, I murmured. What was that? Blake asked, raising an eyebrow. Nothing, I said, just thinking. 10 minutes. I took out my phone, unlocked it discreetly beneath the table. Julia had texted, everything is greenlit. Press drops in 10. TV segment synced, we're go. I looked across the table at them, Blake pretending to care about interest rates, Savannah uploading a filtered shot of the roast chicken, Dad checking his investment app under the table, and Mom droning on about a neighbor's daughter who just made partner at some East Coast firm. 9 minutes. I do have news, I said casually, breaking into their rhythm. Thought I might share it tonight. Dad waved a hand, clearly expecting another sob story. Unless it's a real job, I'd hold off. Let's not ruin dessert. You're right, I said with a small smile. It's not a job. Freelance gig? Blake asked. No. Please tell me it's not another Kickstarter. Savannah groaned. Nope. I looked around at the table. Crystal glasses, monogrammed napkins, silver, that hadn't changed in 20 years. I knew every dent, every scratch. The table still bore a stain from the time Blake spilled Dad's scotch at age 12 and cried until someone else took the blame. That was always the energy in this house, deflection, not accountability. 5 minutes. Are you seeing someone? Lauren asked, trying to pivot. Please don't say it's that barista with the tattoos. Not quite, I said. Dad reached for the remote, muttering something about missing the market wrap-up. He hit the wrong button. And just like that, the screen lit up. CNBC. Breaking news banner. I watched the color drain from Dad's face. The acquisition of Lumina AI by Helios Corp. For $2.4 billion has just been confirmed, the anchor said crisply. Founded by Harper Jameson, the Charleston-born tech founder and CEO, Lumina's breakthrough in ethical AI and cybersecurity has made headlines around the world. Blake's wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. I didn't move. Mom stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Savannah's phone fell flat against her plate. And the clock in my head. It stopped ticking. No one spoke. For a second, I wasn't sure if time had actually stopped, or if everyone had collectively forgotten how to breathe. The silence felt like velvet thick, suffocating, and strangely luxurious. Did she just say, "Your name?" Blake asked, blinking, like he'd just come out of anesthesia. The anchor continued mercilessly. The acquisition, rumored for months, was confirmed at 7 p.m. Eastern. Harper Jameson, who maintained full ownership of Lumina AI, is now among the youngest billionaires in tech. The platform has been quietly integrated into several Fortune 500 systems over the past 3 years. "Is this a joke?" Savannah whispered. "Tell me this is a joke." I pulled my real laptop from my bag, not the old scuffed one they were used to seeing on family visits, the one I kept loaded with dummy spreadsheets and fake startup decks. This was the actual machine. Sleek, unapologetic, M4 chip, password protected with biometric scan. I opened it slowly and turned it around. On the screen, the signed acquisition documents, market reports, a real-time ticker showing Lumina stock already surging. "You own that company?" Dad asked, voice raspy. "I built that company," I said calmly. "Started it in college. Remember that trust fund you said I squandered?" They didn't answer. I used it to seed Lumina. The original $50 is now worth around $8 million just in passive returns. Savannah's eyes were wide, glassy. "But you said you couldn't even afford rent last year." "I never said that," I replied. "You assumed." Lauren looked down at her lap like she could hide there. Blake looked furious, probably doing math in his head, trying to figure out how much I was worth. "The company has offices in Austin, New York, and Tokyo," I continued. "Our software protects energy grids, hospital networks, and yes, some of your favorite banks. Why didn't you tell us?" Mom finally asked, her voice small. "Because every time I tried, you cut me off." Or worse, laughed. Dad crossed his arms, grasping for control. "So you've been lying to us?" "No," I said. "I've been listening." Lauren cleared her throat. "So all those dinners where you couldn't come because of some freelance deadline. I was flying to meetings with investors, or negotiating IP rights, or presenting in front of government boards," I said, scrolling to show a photo of me, shaking hands with the Secretary of Defense. Blake pointed at the screen like it had personally betrayed him. "That's Photoshop." "It's not!" Savannah's voice cracked. "You let us think you were a failure." "No," I said. "You chose to think that. I never corrected you. Because I wanted to know who you were when I had nothing to offer." And Dad snapped. I looked at him steady. "Now I know." The anchor was still talking. "Sources say Lumina's back-end protocols are being called a breakthrough in modern cybersecurity. Investors praise Jameson's ability to maintain privacy and integrity in an age of overexposure." I closed the laptop. Julia called, my actual assistant, not a friend covering for me, not a fake name. "Ms. Jameson," she said crisply through the phone's speaker. "The Helios CEO is ready for the post-announcement press conference, and NYSE wants to confirm your attendance for the bell ceremony tomorrow." "Confirm both," I said, and Julia? "Yes. Have the car brought around, the real one. Bentley or Lucid." I looked up at Blake, who was still staring at his wine-soaked Omega like it could explain something. "Bentley," I said. "When I first started Lumina, I was 24 broke and staying up in my Rice University dorm room on cold pizza and caffeine pills. I didn't know anything about scaling. I barely knew how to manage a server. But I knew what it felt like to be vulnerable online. What it felt like to have your data stolen, your privacy violated, your silence ignored. So I started building, quietly, relentlessly. And while everyone else in my family was out making noise about titles appearances and who had the most likes on their Instagram anniversary posts, I was wiring money to patent attorneys and scraping together early angel rounds from people who didn't care that I wasn't loud. Just that I was smart. I'd been dismissed my whole life for being the quiet one. The one who lived on her laptop. They thought it made me small. But they didn't realize that's where the world lives now, on those servers behind that code, inside the very systems they blindly depend on. I turned my screen back to them and opened the real dashboard this time. A clean UI with my face on the founder's profile. Dire Lumina AI founder and CEO, Harper Jameson. Last round valuation 2.4 buys, confirmed acquisition by Helios Corp. Assets under management 3.2. Next tab real estate holdings. Manhattan penthouse, 73rd floor. Miami Beach estate off market. Austin Ranch compound primary HQ. Tokyo flat corporate retreat location. Charleston Historic District brownstone. Not the one they knew, this one was 2 blocks away and 10 times the price. You own all this, Savannah whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded once. Every property paid in full. No mortgages, no debt. Blake's jaw clenched. What about the shared workspace? You said you rented that little cubicle space. I laughed finally. I bought the building, Blake. Cash. Lauren muttered something under her breath and took another long sip of wine. I pulled up the final tab. A slideshow of Lumina's boardroom. My actual team. Julia standing beside me, pointing to rollout strategy on a smart wall. 10 people in that room. All of them loyal, brilliant, and real. This wasn't fantasy. This wasn't some startup story I was inflating over turkey and tension. This was my life. Built slowly, intentionally, and in complete silence. You watched me work for years, I said softly. And every time I came home, you laughed at what you thought I was. Why didn't you correct us? Mom asked, her mascara already smudged. Because I wanted to see how deep it went. How far you'd go in assuming I was less, just because I wasn't loud like Blake, or curated like Savannah. Dad shifted in his chair, eyes narrowed. That's manipulation. No, I said. That's protection. I looked straight at him. You think I didn't need armor walking into this house every Sunday? You think I didn't know I was the family footnote? I don't believe this, Blake muttered. It doesn't make sense. You can't just build something like this alone. I met his eyes. That's exactly what I did. While you were bragging about promotions and stock tips, I was meeting with CTOs and cybersecurity directors. I was locking down funding rounds and acquiring competitors. I've got 7 patents. 5 are federal grade. 1 is being tested by NASA. The room was silent again. Not the awkward kind. The kind that fills a room when someone finally sees you, really sees you for the first time. And it terrified them. Dad stood up a little too fast. His scotch glass clinked on the table like a warning bell. He straightened his shoulders, trying to summon that courtroom presence he'd used all my life to shut people down. You listen here, young lady, he said, voice clipped and full of some stubborn pride. Just because you've come into some money doesn't mean you get to shame this family. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what you think this is, shame? He pointed at the laptop, parading your success like it's proof we're the ones who failed. That's not how this works. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. I didn't shame you. I gave you the rope. You tied the knot yourselves. Savannah let out a sharp breath. That's so dramatic, Harper. Is it? I said, locking eyes with her. All those years of smug little comments, pretending you were worried about me, while mocking my clothes, my car, my work. You thought I didn't notice. You were wrong. Lauren shook her head. So what, this was revenge? Some long con to embarrass us at dinner? No, I said. This was the moment where I stopped shrinking to fit your expectations, Blake scoffed. You're acting like a victim. You always were sensitive. I turned to him. I'm not a victim, Blake. I'm a mirror. And you don't like what's staring back at you. Mom was crying now, dabbing her eyes with the linen napkin. We just wanted to help you. No, Mom, I said gently. You wanted me to need your help. You wanted me, dependent, struggling a cautionary tale, to make your own choices look better. She shook her head, lip trembling. That's not fair. Neither was the way you let them talk to me. Every dinner, every holiday. You laughed right along with them. I stood, pushing my chair back slowly. You didn't believe in me. That's fine. I didn't build Lumina to prove you wrong. Then what, Savannah asked, arms crossed tight. I built it because I believed in something bigger than this dinner table. I built it because privacy and digital safety matter. Because no one should feel exposed online the way I felt exposed every time I walked through this front door. The air was thick now. No one knew where to look. And for the record, I added, reaching for my glass, this isn't about money. It's about recognition, respect. Things I earned while you were too busy rolling your eyes. Blake opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. You said I wasn't cut out for business, remember? That I wasn't tough enough. You were wrong. I'm just not cruel like you. Savannah's voice cracked. So now what? You just drop this bomb and leave? I stared at her for a moment. That was the plan. Then I took out a thick folder from my bag, one Julia had overnighted, and bound for clarity. But now I think we should talk about you. Savannah froze. I flipped open the cover and turned to the first page. Let's talk about the loan you took from Dad's equity line to keep your firm afloat. Or the 2 lawsuits filed against your LLC for breach of contract. The color drained from her face. Let's talk about what happens when facades crack wide open. Because if they thought my success was shocking, they weren't ready for what I had uncovered about them. Dad looked like someone had punched him through his neatly ironed button-down. The veins in his neck twitched as I turned the page. 3 maxed-out credit cards, I said calmly, glancing at Savannah. Delinquent vendor payments. You're 3 months behind on your studio rent. But don't worry, your aesthetic is still very curated. She flinched and her voice cracked. Where did you get that? I had Julia run a background audit, I said, closing the folder with a soft thud. I needed to be sure I wasn't the only one pretending. Blake snorted. You had her investigate us. After a decade of condescension and pity, you're damn right I did. I reached for the second folder. Thicker. Titled in gold, Blake Jameson, Financial and Legal Activity, 2019 present. Don't, he said quickly. You don't know what you're talking about. I know your firm's internal sales reports have been padded for the last 6 quarters. I know the SEC flagged 3 of your client statements for review. I know the Omega watch was bought on a business credit card you reported as a client dinner. His face paled. You had no right. I had every right. I snapped, the calm breaking for a moment. You dragged my name through mud at every meal, Blake. Told people I was lost, unstable, probably depressed. All while you were manipulating numbers and taking out cash loans in fake LLC names. He slammed his hand against the table hard enough to rattle the plates. You're ruining this family. I met his fury with stillness. No, I'm exposing what was already rotting. Lauren whispered something to him, too soft to hear, but he waved her off and stormed into the kitchen. I heard a drawer slam. I turned to Dad. You're up next. Mom gasped. Harper, please. I slid the final folder across the table, the one labeled Charles and Eleanor Jameson, Household Financial Review. 2 home equity lines, I said, tapping the paper, used to cover Savannah's debt and Blake's legal retainer. You're upside down on the country club dues, and your second mortgage balloon payment is due in 4 months. So unless Helios wants to invest in Jameson Hospitality, Inc., I suggest you get honest about how bad things are. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. We were trying to protect the image. You know how Charleston is. No, I said, ice settling back into my tone. You were protecting yourselves from shame, from gossip, from the embarrassment of having a daughter who didn't follow the script. Dad's jaw locked. You went too far. I leaned in, my voice like a knife sliding through warm butter. You made me a joke for years. I let it happen so I could see who you were when you thought I had nothing. Now you get to sit in that same silence, feel it, taste it. Savannah was openly crying now. You're going to ruin us. I looked at her, not with hate, but with cold clinical clarity. I could, easily, but I won't. Because unlike you, I don't need to see you fail to feel like I've won. I took a breath, steadying my pulse. But I will give you a choice. They all looked up, blinking dazed like deer, hearing a hunter lower his rifle. I opened my briefcase again, slower this time. Inside were 4 sealed envelopes, labeled with their names. Option 1, I said. Keep pretending until it all collapses. Or option 2, I laid the envelopes on the table. You work for me. Savannah looked at the envelope in front of her, like it might bite. What do you mean? Work for you. Exactly what it sounds like, I replied. Entry-level roles. No titles, no corner offices, no special treatment. Dad leaned forward, scoffing. You expect your own family to answer to you. That's cruel. No, I said, holding his gaze. It's honest. Blake returned from the kitchen, red-faced, and breathing like he'd run a mile. He slammed his palms on the table. You seriously think I'm going to take orders from you? I don't think I said. I know you won't. Not until you've got no other choice. But here's the thing, this isn't about punishment. It's about opportunity. Opportunity, Savannah snapped. To be humiliated. To learn something real, I said. To contribute. To build. Not just pose for pictures or inflate resumes with fake wins. Mom wiped her eyes and whispered, But you already won. You proved your point. Why not just let it go? I leaned against the back of my chair, calm now, because letting it go would mean pretending nothing happened. That all those dinners where I sat through the jokes and insults didn't matter. That I should keep smiling now that I'm successful, just so you don't feel uncomfortable. No. I tapped the table gently. You want to keep your dignity, earn it, with work. Blake crossed his arms. What kind of work? Project analyst assistant. You'd start by learning our CRM system, managing task boards, sitting in on sales calls. Real training, no shortcuts. He snorted. You're out of your mind. I turned to Savannah. Creative services intern. You'd work under our visual brand team, learn real design software, observe team meetings get critiqued. It's where everyone starts. I own my firm, she snapped, voice trembling. Which is bleeding money and barely legal, I replied. Sometimes starting over is the only way forward. Then I looked at Dad. His pride had collapsed into a quieter kind of anger, the kind that burns slow. You'd be a special advisor, I said. Not for PR. For internal strategy, legal compliance training for junior staff. We need someone with courtroom experience, and I know you've got that. But you'd be evaluated like everyone else. Performance reviews, salary caps. He opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. And Mom, I said more gently, you've always had an eye for refinement. Our corporate events team needs someone detail-focused. Logistics vendor coordination presentation. You'd be great at it, if you're willing to learn. Her hands shook slightly as she held the envelope. So this is what our punishment? No, I said, it's your lifeline. Silence again. Heavy, but not shocked silence like before. This one had weight to it. Reflection, dread, pride unraveling. You have 24 hours, I said, gathering my laptop. Then the offer expires. Julia will follow up tomorrow morning. And if we say no, Blake asked, voice hard. Then nothing changes, I replied. You keep up the illusion. Keep pretending you're in control. But you'll do it knowing the truth. That I could buy and sell your social circles without even blinking. That I made it without you. That the failure you laughed at became the foundation you now need. I walked toward the door, paused with my hand on the knob. Think it over, I said without turning. It's amazing what clarity comes with silence. And I left them there, surrounded by roast chicken shattered egos and 4 unopened envelopes that weighed more than gold. The next morning, I stood at the New York Stock Exchange, flanked by executives in tailored suits, flashbulbs popping like fireworks, microphones crowding toward my mouth. I'd traded my disguise, faded jeans, and modest blazers for a tailored navy Chanel pantsuit that moved like water against my skin. My name tag didn't say freelancer or developer. It said founder and CEO. The crowd parted as I stepped forward to ring the opening bell. A reporter called out, Ms. Jameson, how does it feel to be the youngest tech founder to close a deal of this scale in cybersecurity? I smiled, remembering the wobbly chair at the family table, the mocking laughter over roasted vegetables, Savannah's ring light-filtered superiority. It feels like integrity rewarded, I said. Another reporter chimed in. Your family must be incredibly proud. I paused. Let the silence bloom. I built Lumina without family support. Sometimes the clearest motivation comes from people who repeatedly tell you what you can't do. Click, flash, scribble. That one made the headlines. I spotted them in the crowd. All 4. Mom in her signature pearls hands clasped like she didn't know what to do with them. Dad with his forced smile, trying to find a camera angle that made him look like a proud father and not a stunned bystander. Blake looking like he was calculating my market cap in his head. And Savannah, arms wrapped tightly around herself like she needed protection from something invisible. They didn't wave. I didn't either. Julia stepped up beside me, holding a leather folio. Board meeting in 1 hour. Time magazine confirmed the interview for next week. Forbes wants the exclusive for your cover story. Also, those responses came in. I raised an eyebrow. From the envelopes. She nodded once. All 4 signed. Full compliance. Starting positions confirmed for Monday. I exhaled slowly. Thank you. She hesitated before speaking again. You sure about this, letting them in? No, I admitted, but I'm not doing it for them. She nodded, understanding, without needing more. That's why she was irreplaceable. I moved to the press area, where my image was already being projected onto screens inside Times Square, my name spinning in headlines below the ticker tape. Just before I stepped onto the stage for the press conference, Savannah approached me. Not fully, just close enough to be seen, but not to interrupt. That apartment you live in, she started. The one you said was a sublet. I turned slowly. Smallest of the 6 I own. She blinked. And the money you borrowed last year, she asked. That $2,000. I was testing you, I said, voice flat, to see if you'd use it against me. She dropped her gaze. And I did. I didn't need to answer. The guilt in her face was louder than any confirmation. She started, but I raised a hand. I'm not looking for apologies, Savannah. I'm offering responsibility, if you want it. She nodded slowly, stepping back into the crowd. The bell ceremony began. I raised my hand and brought it down with a force that echoed louder in my head than it did in that room. It sounded like closure, like a beginning. On screen, Lumina stock opened at $150 and soared to $240 by noon. I didn't flinch. I'd known this was coming. Because I'd built every line of code, every hiring decision, every acquisition strategy. In silence, while they underestimated me. After the press conference, after the photos and interviews and shaking hands with people who used to ignore my emails, I made my way outside. The Bentley was waiting at the curb, polished to a mirror shine driver, in a black suit holding the door open. A few reporters assumed I'd slide right into it. I didn't. I kept walking. 5 cars down, parked under a tree with a long scratch on the back fender, was my 2011 Subaru Outback, the same one that sat in my family's driveway every Sunday, like a sad little punctuation mark on their imagined hierarchy. I opened the door, tossed my bag into the passenger seat, and slid behind the wheel. The seat still had the slight indentation from years of tense drives to and from Charleston. The dash still creaked when I adjusted the AC. It smelled faintly like citrus air freshener and past versions of myself. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was intention, because some victories don't need to be shiny to be final. Julia knocked gently on the window. I rolled it down. "They're watching," she said, tilting her head back toward the building. I didn't look. Let them. She handed me my tablet through the window. Time magazine sent over the cover draft. I glanced at it, my face clean and simple, no forced glamour. The title, Harper Jameson, Quiet Power, Loud Results. "Approve it," I said, then started the engine. The Subaru coughed, then hummed to life. Familiar, reliable, true. As I pulled away, I passed the Bentley. Dad was standing beside it, phone to his ear, probably pretending to be closing a deal. Savannah sat in the back seat, staring straight ahead. Blake wasn't there. Neither was Mom. I didn't stop. Because they had their chance. They had 6 years of Sunday dinners to ask real questions, to pay real attention. Instead, they sharpened every word into a reminder of where they thought I belonged. Turns out I never belonged there. But I still gave them an out. I gave them a job, a door back in, not because they deserved it, but because I had nothing left to prove. Monday morning, they'd show up at my company not as royalty, but as employees. Entry-level, every one of them. No back doors, no special privileges, just opportunity. What they do with it is up to them. And what I do from here, I build. Bigger, smarter, louder if I feel like it, but mostly still in the quiet. The kind of quiet that hums under your skin when you know who you are, what you're capable of, and that you'll never again shrink for someone else's comfort. Some people collect trophies. Some drive sports cars. Some write checks that scream their worth. I just keep driving the car they all laughed at. Because real confidence doesn't need applause. It just needs the truth. What does success look like when no one believes in you? When your own family sees you as a failure because you dared to build in silence? This story wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. About building something real while being dismissed and offering grace when most would choose vengeance. Have you ever been underestimated by the people closest to you? Have you ever had to hide your growth just to protect your peace? Drop your story in the comments. Let's build a thread of resilience. If this resonated with you, subscribe, and share it with someone who's building quietly. Someone who's biding their time. Someone whose power doesn't need a spotlight to be real. Thank you for listening. I'll be back soon with more. Until then, protect your peace and trust the power of your silence.